It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon, the kind where time moves slowly and laughter echoes through a sleepy neighborhood. But then, from behind a forgotten wall of crumbling cement and peeling paint, came a sound so faint it almost went unnoticed. A muffled whimper. Most would have missed it. But not 6-year-old Liam. Guided by pure curiosity and a heart that hadn't yet learned to ignore suffering, he followed the cry. What he discovered behind that cold, lifeless wall would unravel a heartbreaking secret and ignite a rescue that would move an entire town to tears. The sound of sirens pierced the calm neighborhood air, drawing neighbors out of their homes. No one could have imagined what was hidden behind that aging wall. Firefighters, animal control officers, and even a local news crew had arrived, drawn by the urgency in the grandmother's voice and the unwavering insistence of a small boy named Liam. As responders examined the wall with thermal imaging and gentle taps, a faint heat signature confirmed it. Something living was trapped within. With utmost care, they began chipping away at the structure, trying not to collapse anything that could harm the creature inside. Dust filled the air with each strike, a tangible symbol of years of neglect and silence. Then, as the final chunk of cement was removed, the crowd collectively gasped. There, barely visible and pressed tightly between two slabs of concrete, was a frail German shepherd. His ribs jutted out like broken wings, his fur matted with grime, his eyes sunken with exhaustion, but alive. The rescuers worked faster now, urgency replacing caution. Every second counted. A firefighter whispered softly as he reached in, "Hang in there, buddy," as if trying to breathe hope into the broken body. When they finally freed him, the dog didn't bark or struggle. He simply laid his head against the firefighter's arm, as though surrendering. Not from fear, but from overwhelming relief. Liam, watching with wide eyes, clutched his grandmother's hand and whispered, "He's been waiting for someone to hear him." As the shepherd was gently placed on a stretcher and whisked away, someone in the crowd quietly began to cry. They all understood. This wasn't just an animal rescue. This was the unveiling of a hidden tragedy, one buried, not just in concrete but in silence. Yet in the heart of a child, hope had survived. And through his act of courage and compassion, a life that had nearly been erased from the world was being given one more chance to live. Shadow, the name given to the rescued shepherd, was admitted to the emergency veterinary clinic that same evening. The prognosis was grim. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, muscle atrophy, and psychological trauma. The vet, Dr. Evans, gently warned the family that while the dog had survived the entombment, his spirit might be too broken to recover. But Liam refused to believe that. "He's still wagging his tail," he said, eyes fixed on the weak movement of Shadow's matted tail. "He hasn't given up, so we won't either." Over the following days, Liam and his family became regular visitors. Every afternoon after school, Liam sat by Shadow's side, reading picture books aloud, humming lullabies, and occasionally just sitting quietly, letting the dog feel the presence of kindness. Slowly, a change began to take root. The first time Shadow lifted his head to nuzzle Liam's hand, the entire room paused. It wasn't just recovery. It was trust being reborn. The vet staff began referring to Shadow as the miracle pup, inspired by his will to heal and the love he received. Volunteers and strangers, moved by the news reports, began sending blankets, food, and even hand-drawn cards from other children. One letter read, "Dear Shadow, I'm glad you didn't give up. You're not alone anymore." The clinic filled with hope and warmth. Shadow gained strength, began walking again, and even barked softly for the first time in weeks. A raspy but beautiful sound that brought tears to the eyes of those who'd feared he might never speak again. Dr. Evans, once skeptical, now smiled every time she saw Shadow wag his tail as Liam entered. "This boy didn't just save his life," she said one afternoon, watching the two together. "He brought him back from a place most don't return from." It became clear. Shadow was no longer just a rescue case. He was living proof of the healing power of empathy, especially when it comes from the purest source, the heart of a child. 3 months later, under the golden warmth of a spring afternoon, Shadow walked proudly beside Liam in the neighborhood, Park, leash in hand, tail wagging, head held high. His transformation was almost unrecognizable. The scars were still there, of course, faint reminders of his ordeal, but his coat had regained its shine, and his eyes now sparkled with something long forgotten: joy. The community gathered for a small celebration organized by the local shelter. Balloons danced in the wind, children giggled, and Shadow was showered with treats and gentle pats. But it wasn't the celebration that meant the most. It was the quiet moments between Liam and Shadow, when Liam would rest his head against Shadow's side and whisper, "You're my best friend." Or when Shadow, despite being surrounded by noise, never took his eyes off the boy who saved him. Liam's parents had officially adopted Shadow, and the dog had found not just a home, but a family that truly saw him. The media had continued to follow the story, but for Liam, this wasn't about fame. It was about connection. "Everyone thought I found him," Liam told a reporter during a school interview. "But really, I think he found me too." That quote would go viral, sparking conversations about the invisible suffering around us and the unexpected power of young hearts to make a difference. Shadow soon became a symbol, not just of survival, but of what happens when we stop, listen, and choose kindness. As Liam and Shadow sat side by side near the same wall that once served as a prison, the camera caught a simple, beautiful moment. A boy leaning against a dog, both quiet, both safe, both free. The wall was now painted with a mural of Shadow's face and Liam's handprint, with the words, "Some bonds can't be buried." In the end, this wasn't just a rescue story. It was a parable of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest places, love can find its way in, and once it does, it leaves a light that can never be dimmed.